Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout as we look ahead to Fantasy Premier League Game Week 37. Today I'm joined by a special guest who is near the top 200. He's at 203rd at the moment in FPL. He's within a whisker of winning the Brighton and Hove League in FPL, and unlike anyone else who's ever won that league, he's actually scored for Brighton in actual real life. It's former defender for Leicester, Brighton, Leeds, Coventry and many more, Matt Heath, who now coaches at Kettering. Matt, welcome. How are you?
Yes, really good. Really good, thank you. Really appreciate you having me on. It's nice to know that I can share my FPL geek side a little bit with somebody who's, without being disrespectful, I'm sure you'd call yourself an FPL geek.
Well, no, I am, yeah. That is my job. And no, it's great that you're here. It's great for me as obviously someone who's into FPL, but also as a Brighton fan as well. I know we were speaking a bit before we started. And you were at Brighton on loan for a period of around about a month, and we were talking about some of the players that you were there with, Gary Hart, Glenn Murray, for example. And it was a tricky season. We narrowly avoided relegation, and it was through loan players like yourself who came in to help us out that we actually escaped relegation that season into League Two. This is back when Brighton were in League One. So thanks a lot for that.
And with Dean.
Yeah, with Dean, which was, I mean, as I'm sure you'll probably agree, possibly one of the worst places you've ever played. I don't.
Funnily enough, do you know what? If you look at it, it wasn't very pleasing on the eye,
No.
but it was a great stadium to play at because the opposition didn't like coming. So whenever I played there for Brighton, it was always 1-0 really on the scoreline to us, wasn't it? So
It was well, because I was Brighton born and bred. That's where I used to do my school sports day.
Sports day with a track around, yeah.
With the track around it. We used to do our school sports day there. But yeah, so I was quite amazed when it became our stadium. But prior to that, we were ground sharing at Priestfield at Gillingham. And so it was a bit of a hike back then. So, but yeah, as those fans who went there, it's quite a tricky stadium to go to. It's a bit bare. Yeah, no, thanks so much for that. And okay, so you are in the Brighton League, but you're from Leicester, and you're probably most famous for being a defender at Leicester because you were at Leicester in the Premier League as well. So I assume Leicester would be ordinarily your team in FPL.
Born and bred in Leicester, Joe. So it's one of club close to my heart. Obviously, over the moon that we've gained promotion this year. As soon as we've gone down, we've gone straight back up. It's been a roller coaster last few months for the fans and the players and the coaching staff there. But no, it's great that we've done that. But yeah, I'm in the Brighton League. You've got to pick somebody, and Brighton is, as you've probably noted, one of my only former club who are or were in the Premier League this season. So it's quite easy to pick. You always have your former clubs a little closer to your heart than the rest of them. And funnily enough, I went to watch Leicester Brighton a couple of years ago when Matoma was on fire and March was on fire. Ferguson was coming into the team. And I just kind of fell in love with how Brighton played that day. And then I just watched every single Brighton game for the rest of the season last year. I thought De Zerbi was brilliant. And even with my players at Kettering know that we then just decided to play Brighton formation every week. Oh. And I called it the Brighton. We're going to do the Brighton.
Wow. Because
I was so impressed.
Because, I mean, Brighton, historically, they changed really to that sort of possession-based sort of football, but then it sort of evolved into this sort of kamikaze playing out from the back. But it's okay with the players they've got ordinarily, but a lot of injuries this season, so that's why they're conceding a bit. But yeah, it's a really exciting, fun watch.
I bet it is for the fans, especially last year. With the players that you've had in form, it was unbelievable. And then obviously you've lost a few players, didn't you, to the bigger boys? But that's what happens in football.
So Leicester back next season.
Leicester are back.
You're going to be a few Leicester players. Well, we can only have 3 players from a team in FPL, but going to go for some Leicester.
Do you know what? I just feel like as a third striker, Jamie Vardy's got to be in there, hasn't he?
Final throw of the dice for him as well. Dewsbury Hall is a player that I like a lot of. I know Brighton are actually keen to try and sign him.
No, back off.
No, I know. No, that's well. that's what Brighton fans say all the time to Liverpool, Chelsea, etc.
So yeah,
Back
of
off, no
course.
more, don't take any more.
No, he's had a great season. He's obviously he went on loan last year, and
Mm,
he's been the driving force or one of the driving forces in our midfield this year. But hopefully a good future ahead of him, and hopefully all the financial issues that Leicester have got swirling above their head won't impact us too much.
okay.
Also,
Looking at this season, where you are in FPL, now I spoke before we came on air that I noticed the number one in the Brighton League. Now you're fourth.
right,
There's about 40 points or so, but number one is Tom Hadley, who I've interviewed a few weeks back when he was number one in FPL, and he's a Wigan fan, and so yeah,
you,
I might have to have a word with him to move on.
you must have watched Brighton last year and enjoyed it.
Must have done. I'm very pleased that that he recognises Brian. Maybe he's been converted since, so maybe I've done him an injustice. But I did see Wigan play. I sometimes see Cheltenham play because they're quite near where I am now.
Okay.
And I did see Wigan, and they were pretty good actually. They were pretty good, but they're not as good as Leicester, not as good as Brighton, and maybe not as good as Kettering. I don't know.
I tell you what, I don't know if you've done any research into Kettering, but we stayed up with a few games to go this
That's
season.
good.
So it was a positive outcome at the end of the year.
Yeah, which league is Kettering in now?
Yeah, Kettering are in step 3 of the non-league
Yeah.
pyramid this year. We got relegated last year, stayed up this year. It's kind of we're looking to build on where we are now and move up.
Yeah, so that would be to move up to National League South?
North we would be in.
National League North, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So that's the goal, really.
That's the aim. Well, good luck with that. I'm another of my local teams, Yeovil. I do go to see quite a lot. They moved down to National League South last season, but they've just been promoted this season. They're pretty good side to watch as well. They're getting quite good crowds, about 6,000-7,000, which at that level was pretty huge there. So, but yeah, so I'll have to have a word with Tom, get him to move on so you can win the Brighton League. Let's have a look at your career history and sort of your season so far. Now, you said, I mean, this has got to be the question really. How come you're now hovering around the top 200? Because what's changed this season?
So I know you showed me when my FPL kind of season started, but I can remember playing, and I don't know if I changed an account. I remember playing in about 06, 07 with the players at Leeds United when I was at Leeds. We had a few of us that were really into it, and we had the rivalry on. I can remember on the team bus on the way home, you always check in and giving a little bit of stick out to each other. So I can remember being really casual, fun, but well, it obviously is a fun game to play, and it should be, but really casual in the early years. And then as time went on, I think I just naturally played and played and played. Some seasons I got off to a flyer, and then you put a little bit more effort into it. And then other seasons, if it's a bad start, I feel like I was that casual that I probably forgot about it for a couple of weeks. Thinking back now, I don't know why I was like that, because last season got me hooked in a different way. If I'm going to be honest, I commute to work for about an hour each way. And one day I just looked on, I listened to a few podcasts, a few football ones under the Coach Boys. I listened to them quite a little bit in the car. And I noticed on the FPL app, there was a podcast at the bottom. So I clicked on it, and it's quite light-hearted banter on the official FPL podcast. And just through listening to that, the odd other people get mentioned and the next person gets mentioned. And, within a couple of months, I'm listening to Praz and the boys on the wire and getting into that, and all of the bits and bobs that you guys do on Fantasy Football Scout. And it just opened my eyes a little bit to how the game could be played, and just to take and soak in a little bit more information on what's about, and then make your own mind up at the end of the week. I think that's quite important now, because if you just copy other people and it doesn't go well, you'd be really annoyed at yourself, wouldn't you? It's like in football coaching. If you've got an idea, you should do what you want to do, because if it works, it's your idea, you're happy. And if it doesn't work and it's your idea, it's your own fault anyway. So you don't want to listen to other people and just do what other people want to do. But I think it's important to, make your mind up and gather as much information as you can through the week, and then just be as prepared at the end of the week to make a calm decision.
Oh, it's good that content by my fellow content creators has helped to sort
I
of
do like your one you do with
Oh,
the general as well.
cheers. Thanks a lot for that. I'll mention that to him. And yeah, it's often I find it there's some, as you said, all of the things you just mentioned there about being patient, wait till the end of the week, and these are all sort of tried and tested sort of tactics that just do work. And I find that there's there's an obvious difference between fantasy football and real life football. And I remember one winner, guy Simon March, who does content for Fantasy Football Scout as well. He didn't watch any football that season. He's a Chelsea fan, but he couldn't, because he lived in Singapore at the time, just the time difference, and was working. He just couldn't watch the matches. But he ended up winning because he was looking at a lot of articles, absorbing content and looking at the stats and obviously the results and any highlights. So it shows that there's a real difference there. But when I've spoken to sort of former pros or sort of people who are actually good at football, like you, there is a difference there. You spot other things, I think, sometimes. So how do you think being a former Premier League player has helped sometimes in your decision making in terms of the sort of things that you can perhaps see that I couldn't?
Do you know what? It's a really good question, because if I had a lot of friends who still play, it's quite easily to just go and ask them, what's the injury news on this lad or this lad, and but I've not got that. But I'm going to be honest. I've got one friend who's a youth coach at Burnley, and I did ask him about Charlie Taylor once. Do you know anything about him? Can you find out? I think it was back in the when I was trying to ride game week 29, and I wanted him to play, and I needed. Right. He didn't come back with anything.
No.
But I don't know. Maybe I can't see it making a big difference. I used to play football, but maybe just a couple of things, like maybe how a manager might feel the pressure to play certain players at certain times of the year. If they've got an experienced player and he's not played for a couple of games and they might have a poor run of results, I know what would be happening behind closed doors, and that player would be back in the team, maybe ahead of a younger player. Okay. So that could be something that I look at. Injuries, I know what I would think certain injuries for certain players of a certain age might be like. So, for example, when Cher picked up a hamstring injury, was it last week?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
In my own mind, I'm thinking he's on the wrong side of 30. He's not going to come back in the next week or so. So he's a no-go. And then we found out that he might be out for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
I think little things like that might just go through my head. And again, I'm not disrespecting anyone that hasn't played football, because it's just it might be obvious to other people to think the same way as well.
No, the reason I ask is because it's quite rare. So it's obviously, I would imagine a lot of footballers play fantasy football as well, because it's just quite a fun thing to do. You can do it, as you said, like back in the days when you were at Leeds as well. You can have a good bit of banter with each other about it as well. But at the same time, there is that slight difference. I mean, sometimes there's certain content creators I watch that will look at things that perhaps they're a fan of, I don't know, Manchester United, for example, and they'll see certain things. Maybe they'll see. I mean, I think I was listening to 5 Live actually last night. There was an example of someone being told by Jamie Carragher something about last October, I think it was, Casemiro. His movement's much worse this season than it was last season, and so it's been shown that by him moving back to your role, back in centre back in defence, Casemiro's age and movement has been shown up. But because obviously Jamie Carragher's a former pro in that position, he knew what movement was needed.
Yeah, maybe. I do think, like I say, I listen to a little bit of content while I'm driving. And I do think now and again, just one sentence will come out and really stick out in my mind. And I'm like, yeah, that's obvious. And it might be that I haven't thought of it myself, but it just makes so much sense. And it could be one sentence out of 100 I listened to in the few days that you guys talk about. So maybe that has helped, maybe it hasn't. Maybe I've just got lucky enough, picked a lucky chip strategy this year.
Well, no, I mean that's it. I mean, look, I've got on the screen at the moment. I've got your history of your previous season. So you've got a back in 2013, you were in the top 61k, which is pretty strong there. And looking at chips as well, you've used your chips very wisely this season in very standard sort of. So you wild carded in sort of game week 8, which gives you enough time to sort out the sort of players you want. You triple captain in game week 25.
Like everyone else.
And you wildcard in game week 30, and you free hitted in game week 34. So you wildcarded sort of with these current fixtures in mind as well. And it's that game week 34 free hit where you got into the top thousands with a pretty huge 138 points. I can't recall myself ever getting that, maybe. But I'm just thinking that seems to have been the change. That's propelled you into the top 1,000 and up to sort of 200 as well. So you've got your bench boost next. Are you going to be using it this week?
I think I'm 99% certain I am going to be using it this week. I did toy with the idea of being different to everybody else and just going, do you know what? I've done so well. I've enjoyed it. If I'm so different to everyone else and the gods are on my side, it might just propel me above a few more if I use it in 38. But in looking at really what I'm going to get out of it and the uncertainty of who's going to play in 38, I think I'd be a bit stupid too.
Yeah. Okay, well let's put your team up then. This is the team sort of before any transfers that you might make. Have you got 1 or 2 transfers left?
I've got 2 free transfers.
Good position.
Well, I'm going to tell you my sob story now because obviously I had Lascelles got injured. Who else did I have? Dogi got injured. Shah's obviously injured. Gusto, he's got injured and hardly in the team. So in an ideal world, and I know we all get these injuries, I'm not saying it's just me, I'd have probably a couple more transfers, or I would be a little bit more prepared for next week and be a little bit more in line with the wild carders. However, sometimes it doesn't work that way, does it? Your ideal team doesn't have as many points as, maybe your second-rate team. So I think that's another thing that's helped me over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, my dream was game week 38. I'll have 2 free transfers. I'll get, I don't know, Saka in, Salah in, whoever. I can spend that. But Harry Maguire out for the season. Bruno Fernandes misses his first game ever through injury. And Fabian Schär as well. I've got him. So those dreams have ended. I'm just going to quickly read out your team just for the benefit of those listening to the podcast, and then we'll go through your team and see what decisions you're going to come to. So you've got a 3-5-2 as it stands, but could be a bench boost. You've got Petrovic, Gabriel, Gvardiol, and Gusto. Then you've got Saka, Son, Foden, Gordon, and Palmer across the midfield. And up front, Isak and Haaland, who's your captain, understandably after 4 goals last week. And you've got Kelleher on your bench, who, if you were bench boosting, he'd have to go. Branthwaite, home to Sheffield United, good fixture. Muniz of Fulham. And Fabian Schär, who is out for the season. So I'm presuming your 2 free transfers, if you're bench boosting, Kelleher and Schär have to go.
That's exactly what the plan is. At the minute, I'm looking at Pedro Porro's got to be a kind of a no-brainer to come in for Schär. I'm kind of looking at maybe Onana or the Tottenham boy Vicario in goal to back it up. I'm thinking if I go for 2 Tottenham again, not many people would think that that's a dead cert clean sheets, but they've got a couple of favourable fixtures, so that could just be something that edges me ahead if it works in my favour. However, I feel like if I go with Onana, I can afford Salah on over Foden in the last week. Wow. So that points of millions do make a difference.
So you've got a bit of money in the bank then at the moment?
I've got a bit of money in the bank, and that actually I'm looking to take a -4 as well, maybe, and change Muniz for.
Yeah.
I did want Callum Wilson, but I did hear a whisper that he was injured yesterday, so
Yeah.
I might be snookered into picking Pedro or
Mm.
Hoyland. But I think it was, if I picked Pedro, I could afford Salah the week after.
I think that's what the way you have to think about it, isn't it? With the, what would this move bring in? So, for example, as a Brighton fan, I could bring Lewis Dunk in, but if I do, I can't get Saka in the following week.
There you
But
go.
but I might get Havertz in instead. So I have to weigh that up. So yeah, I think you're right with Onana. We did a video earlier this week, and I was looking at some goalkeeper stats. And one of the interesting things about Onana is that he makes a hell of a lot of saves. I think he's got the best save rate out of any of these goalkeepers you'd be considering for the double game week. I think it's something every 23 minutes or so. So even if they concede, which I imagine against Arsenal and Newcastle is probably likely, you could end up getting, you could get 9 saves in a match, could get three
Quite
extra
easily.
points. Yeah.
And I'm sure if they miraculously do keep a clean sheet, he'll be right up there as well,
Yeah.
won't he? And bonus on top. So
Yeah.
he could be a good little
Yeah.
punt in the goalkeeper position, really. So yeah, I'm probably siding towards him a little bit.
And
He told it to me.
and Porro I think is a good option. He's probably the only defensive option. I was doing a video with my colleague on some of the videos, Tom Freeman, and
He was a lunatic, wasn't he?
yeah, he was saying about Romero is a lunatic. It's exactly that phrase, and you don't know what you're going to get. He might score you 2 goals.
You might get him on a good day, mightn't
might
you?
get a
But you
clean
also
sheet.
might.
He might decide to take out the referee. I don't know.
Exactly. So he's a tough one to go for, isn't he?
Yeah.
But it's the right time of the year if you wanted to go for someone like that. He's not going to be in your team long, is he? So
And I like your thought about getting Salah in 38. I've got another possible idea for you, but you might not go for this and also lock you out of Salah. So feel free to, in fact, definitely ignore it. But I'll just mention it anyway. That Trippier is back in the final stages of his rehabilitation. Now, you as an ex-pro might know about this. Now, he is the wrong side of 30, and he's coming back from an injury.
he is.
But he arguably is needed at Newcastle, his creativity. Would you be tempted if you saw Trippier back in training this week for Newcastle to get him instead of Share?
Do you know what? Class is permanent
Yeah.
and form is temporary. And he's obviously one of the players that has lots of class. So if I do see him, he's definitely an option. I have thought about it. I feel like, though, if I'm going back on my own kind of thoughts, for him to come in and play 2 games in a week after such a long injury on the wrong side of 30 is probably a big ask. But then the pressure maybe that Eddie Howe plays him, and I've just got to weigh that one up if it is an option.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Livramento and Hall being able to operate on the flanks, I think Howe hopefully would feels that they've got that covered, and Trippier's not easy. But yeah, it's just someone I mentioned as a thought. It's not you don't really, it's being 200th in the world. This is so for you to finish where you finish in the season. I mean, winning it is probably a stretch too far.
Yeah, nowhere near.
But where would you just like? Would you just like to finish around this sort of level and just go? Because that would be huge. That would be better than I've ever got.
This is my biggest achievement in football. If I stay around him, yeah, I joke, but I've enjoyed every minute of it. If I finish 300-400 or below 200, I think it's been a great year and really exciting and fun with the few friends that I do have that are quite into it. I've got a friend who every Saturday morning in the gym, we do a gym workout and then we have a little chat about what we're going to do transfer. So I've got one friend there that I bounce ideas off. But for me, I mean, if I got in the top 100, I'd be over the moon. I don't think I will do because I'm behind, like I said, with a few players on the more recent wildcarders. So, but you never know. I might just keep Muniz in there, play him, and if Man City falter, I'm sure he'll be there on the score sheet and no one will have him.
Yeah.
So that's another option as well.
Yeah, so with at Kettering as well at work as well. So you mentioned about like with a friend of yours in the gym, but with at Kettering, is there a sort of a league there? Are you involved in that? Because you must be
Yeah,
top of that.
yeah. Funnily enough, we've got a couple of leagues. I started one with the supporters at the beginning of the year, and we got about 300-400 supporters in the league. And I spoke to he wasn't the chairman, but the guy in charge at the time, and shall we throw out a season ticket for the winner? Don't worry, I'll try and win it though for
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
And I'm top of that by 100 points, so that one's
Wow.
gone. In the grand scheme of things, I work on the education program as well with 16, 17, 18-year-olds, and we're in a bigger education program across the Midlands. So we've got another league with all the students and staff in there with the 200 or 300. And again, there's a couple pushing me in that one. There's a couple of good, lads that are
Wow.
decent at FPL there. So I think I'm probably 50 points ahead in that one. So anything again could happen
Yeah.
there. So no, it is fun. I tell my students every day how well I'm doing, and they don't care. They don't care.
They don't care.
No,
They will. They will. If you imagine if you won it, that would be.
I promise they don't.
Yeah. The other thing I just wanted to mention about your team, actually, because I noticed obviously Saka being there. He's someone I would love to get in game week 38, and I got rid of him in my game week 35 wildcard. But I have noticed that the more successful managers in recent weeks, they've wildcarded but kept Saka. So what was your decision around that? Was it just like a no-brainer for you that Saka's a great player, just you've got to have him in?
Yeah, I mean, like I wild carded in about game week 30, and we needed him at that time. We had doubles coming up.
Right.
And then just in my mind, I thought having good players, again, class players in your team, they're going to score points over a long period of time. And I feel like you can have the fear of missing out. FOMO's so overrated
Yeah.
because you might want to get Bruno Fernandes in because everyone else has got him in. He's got a double coming up, and ultimately he's picked up an injury and Saka's been on fire.
Yeah.
So that fear of missing out isn't there all the time. You shouldn't really go with that, and you should just overlook it. It is overrated, in my opinion, and you just go with good players from good teams that are fit and playing. And Saka, for me, was over the last couple of weeks a great differential that I thought I'm not going to get rid of him. Why would I? And again, this week he's definitely in the team. United are a little bit shaky at the back at the minute, like we were talking about before we started with Casemiro and Johnny Evans at the back in the last game. It could be a couple of goals for Saka again this week, and he's probably not in many people's team.
No, it's starting to give me thoughts. My team, I have Bruno Fernandes. I'm very worried about seeing him. I mean, it's as a an ex-pro to have a player like Bruno Fernandes in your team who never misses through injury. I mean, I've never even heard of that, because every footballer seems to get an injury at some point.
Like Frank Lampard back in the day, just never missed a game, did he?
But for him to miss a game, that would be that's sent alarm bells ringing. But yeah.
Well, and you've also got to think they've got the FA Cup final coming up at the end of the season. So he's personally not going to want to risk a 50-50 for a game. What's the point in him risking that at all? Why would the manager want to risk him 50-50 for a game that might not really matter? So for me, they're not going to push him one little bit in the next week or two.
Okay, that's an interesting point. I mean, I guess it was at the back of my mind. It was the cup final, but yeah, it's that obviously going through the minds of not only the players but the manager as well. In with this huge game coming up, it's their last gasp to get sort of glory, really.
Yeah, there's not one good thing that can come out of him playing and picking up potentially an injury that will keep him out of that game. So for me, now it's happened. Like, obviously you didn't know when you picked him, but now it's happened. It's kind of stay away from him. And even if he did play, would he want to go into a 50-50? Would he be trying his hardest, or would he just be looking after that injury?
Yeah, that's a good point. It was good to get that analysis. So, I mean, this season very different to the others, and it's showing that, as you said, you sort of been sort of following some of those sort of key advice and being a bit patient towards the week, and boy, is it showing. Top 200, which is huge, because I the highest I've ever got was top 700, I think, so 800 and something. But this was 10 years ago. This was like when there was 2 million people, but 10 million people playing it to be top 100. That's absolutely immense, I think.
I know, like I said, I tell my students all the time, there's 10 million people in it,
Yeah.
and I'm doing this well, and
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, whatever. But no, it's just for me. It's just been really. It's been a great journey this year. Like you said, over the last 3-4 weeks, I've shot from about 10,000 into 200 with that great um, free hit week where the Palace trio, Elise,
Yeah.
Eze, and Mateta did wonders for me. I just had a feeling that they would do, and that's why I went for them instead of the defender. I can't remember the defender's Muniz, is it?
Yeah,
Might
it
be
is,
wrong.
yeah.
So it's just one of them ones where each week I've had a green. I don't think I've had 2 red arrows probably in the last 15, 16 weeks, and they've
Wow.
been really small red arrows.
Yeah.
So I have been lucky because
Mm.
you do need that little bit of
Yeah.
luck. And when I say luck, you need to pick the strategy at the beginning of the year, maybe, and then every transfer you make is geared towards that strategy. And if it is the one that works, then you probably jump above a big amount of people, don't you? And them little decisions along the way, picking Guardiola at the right time, getting on Isak instead of Darwin on my wild card, them little things do help, obviously.
Well, good luck with the remaining game weeks. Good luck at Kettering. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with Kettering and getting promotion next season. That's the
Thank you.
that's the aim. Take care. See
Thank
you
you very
soon.
much.
See you
Cheers.
soon.
Thank you.